Good morning, everyone. Very glad to be here today to speak to you all and be part of the conversation around poverty, how we approach talking about poverty and indeed its impacts. And I'll cover that today and give a bit of context in terms of the response in the community here in Belfast. I want to thank the organisers for the invite and the opportunity to be here today. I founded Foodstock in the Community Solidarity Hub in Belfast, and it basically works to both practically tackle poverty here in Belfast and also to empower people right across the city through community-led initiatives and projects. Very recently, I was also elected to Belfast City Council, and that figures somewhat in some of the subject matter here today as well. As we are in Belfast today, I want to give you a bit of an insight into the situation here and indeed how communities are responding. And again, I'm aware that there's actually groups who are working on the ground in communities here in Belfast and beyond. And I'd like to recognise their work as well here today. It's good to see them here in the room. Today, first and foremost, I believe that it is vitally important that we are speaking about poverty in whatever context and whenever possible. Poverty is an injustice and one we all have an obligation to strive to eradicate from our society. Belfast is no stranger to poverty, and indeed in my own community of West Belfast, sadly we very often appear in the top 10 of lists for all the wrong reasons: child poverty, social deprivation, high suicide rates, lack of housing, just to name a few. But when we speak in numbers and figures, and when we talk of, for example, 1 in 5 children living in poverty, or we use graphs or charts to outline the severity of these issues, the bottom line is that we're talking about people. People like you and I who, for whatever reason in their lives, have fallen into the poverty trap. And with that, this lends to the main motivation of Foodstock and the Community Solidarity Hub in Belfast and what we do in communities. And that is very simply about people looking out for people. And a movement within that has been created of solidarity, if not charity, of rights, if not charity. And I want to tell you a bit about that today. Before I go on, I suppose everyone has an origin story. You know, why would you want to set something like this up? And I think in terms of many people in this room, and again, I've spoke to many people who, in a very similar fashion, have done what I've done in their community, and that has been a response to what is going on around them. And for me, in terms of what I do now, I didn't for once see myself doing this, you know, and taking this direction. And for me, you know, it all emanated from growing up in an area of West Belfast, Turf Lodge, in the 80s and 90s in West Belfast. And that part of the city, like many others, and many other communities right across Northern Ireland, was marred by the brutal Troubles. But beneath that lay shocking levels of poverty. And I experienced that in my own household. And I watched as my parents struggled to put food on the table to heat our home. The people who lived on our street, my friends at school, they all struggled the same way throughout childhood. As I grew older, I began to notice that the same people I grew up with, went to school with, now had the same struggles with their own children. And it was very clear and it was very obvious to me that a cycle of poverty existed in our communities, not just in my own community, but communities right across Northern Ireland. And with that, at that time, there's nothing worse than feeling that frustration and not knowing where to try to start to change it. But my first response was to initiate Foodstock in West Belfast. And basically a collective of people coming together. Had very, very humble beginnings. It started off in my garage at home, you know, and much to the delight of my wife, much to the delight of neighbours, to be honest. But, you know, it was just a practical response. It was very humble. It was nothing flashy. It was just basically a garage with food, and we were getting out to people who needed it in the community. And in a typical fashion in terms of a community response, you know, people would stop and say, "What are you doing?" And when I told them, "Look, we're trying to reach vulnerable people in the community," they would say, "Look, well, I've got half an hour. I'll give you a hand." and they would give a hand that day, they would come back the next day, they would come back the following week. And that sort of community solidarity movement built from there. You know, those people are still with us many years on and are a vital role. So a community stepped up, and it was very much the case, the community stepping up where maybe there was a lack of a government response. Throughout the course of the period of COVID, hitting our communities, you know, we've seen many vulnerable people living isolated in homes, and we needed to get to people, you know, so we created this method where we were reaching people, we were driving to their homes as well. And, you know, it's important we're talking about the stigma associated to these sorts of responses in communities as well. Part of that we recognised very early on, you know, in terms of people actually coming to a place and availing of food, where we set up a model where we were actually getting to people's homes and going to their homes and reaching them with food as well. So again, quite a big response throughout COVID-19, but again, the real underlying impacts of poverty in our communities started to open up for us, and we've seen that on a day-to-day basis. And with that, we had to respond. Literally thousands of food parcels going out into communities on a weekly basis, and that was quite shocking to see. But again, a community responding where a government had fallen behind. You know, and in terms of how we had set up, we know very quickly this escalated into quite a large movement. We had 30, 40 volunteers, and we had to move to a larger premises just to be able to reach people, you know, and it was a 7 day a week operation, and it still is, sadly, in response to what's going on in communities. And you know, we had to set up this large hub in Andersonstown, but right away, and I think we need to touch on it today in terms of that approach, I think it was very important that we created the right environment and the right environment where people can come in and with dignity avail of help. And I think that, you know, in our approach, I think it's hard enough for people to come and avail of help without there being further obstacles put in their way. And I think, you know, we try to relay this to maybe other operations who are setting up as well in terms of, you know, in terms of people's dignity and the stigma around this is coming in. And if someone needs help, no, we're there. You know, we're there to give them a hand rather than kind of asking them for what is their situation, what is their status, and so on as well. So that was a very kind of important part of what we do. Again, right away, this expanded. You know, rather than just handing someone a parcel of food, there were so many different issues that people were experiencing. And we found that we had that mutual food aid operation operating, sometimes supporting 500 homes on a sometimes daily basis. Such was the scale of the response across Belfast. And again, with that, supporting people to keep warm in their homes. And one big aspect as well would be around child poverty in our communities as well. One thing, whenever we started doing this in communities, we kind of built this kind of network where people were coming to us, were speaking, and people were relaying the many issues that they were experiencing in communities. And one of the biggest aspects that we're trying to tackle now directly is child poverty in our communities. Hunger being a real obstacle to many children's education. And in a very small way, we're trying to tackle that in the community. You know, it's only a sticking plaster. But again, what we really need to see is a greater response from government. But for us, I think it's a shocking indictment of society at the minute. In 2024, there are operations like ourselves, there's food banks, actually supporting children in our schools. You know, that's a shocking way where things are at currently. But for us, we're certainly seeing it as being a major issue and a major part of our approach. Again, many things you'll hear within news stories and headlines around poverty. One of the big things that we've been trying to tackle is around school uniforms and many people kind of being outpriced as well. Again, another barrier to children's education and to families is the fact that if a family can't afford to put food on the table, where are they going to find £90 to pay for a blazer? You know, so at our hub, in a way of a response, we set up a pre-loved school uniform hub. And where people could come and basically created a space where people can come and take what they need or leave what they no longer need. So again, that real message of community solidarity where people can come and alleviate some of that pressure that parents are facing. With that as well, you know, it's very difficult, and I think this kind of lends to the conversation today is the fact that people maybe coming for help or for support. We felt as if we needed to create a space, and with that, there's much more than just handing someone a parcel of food. It's about the conversation. It's about trying to signpost people, and with that, we created the Solidarity Cafe in West Belfast, a place where people could come together. A lot of our sort of vulnerable people in the community could come and keep warm, get advice, learn languages. So we've a language hub there. We've a community connect for asylum seekers, refugees. People can avail of benefit support there. But we talking about empowerment as well. We have classes there. We have people who can come and avail of access to further education. And we also have access to employment. So on a Friday, we operate as a job centre on a Friday. And just a few weeks ago, we maybe 40, 50 people coming to the hub who had previously come and had the avail of the food bank or social supermarket or uniform hub. And they were able to start job the next week as a result of that employability approach at our hub. So again, some important aspects where the environment there is very key. And for us, creating that space, it's allowing people to come and with dignity feel part of the community and also get whatever they need in terms of moving forward. So that to us, the approach, the environment, and how we approach people being in difficulty and coming to the hub, I think, is very key for us. In terms of food access, a big thing for us is the type of food as well, which I think is important. And I think Belfast has been groundbreaking in terms of how we approach this, and how we are creating our own food systems throughout communities as well. And for us, we've tapped into that and we've created growing spaces throughout communities as well, so that people can get access to the food that'll keep them healthy. And I'm just looking up here. This is De La Salle School in West Belfast, and this is also our hub here in West Belfast, where we're bringing people together to grow food so they can avail of a more healthy and nutritious diet and incorporate nutritious food into their meals. But in terms of, and again, I want to give you a bit of context about where we're at, especially in Belfast as well. Whenever we go to some of those schools, and when we go to those schools and we set up these initiatives where basically we're finding a growing space within a school and we're encouraging young people to grow and then incorporate this into their meals. We're having conversations with children who have never tasted a strawberry before in their lives. Children who are unaware of the different vegetables and the nutritious values around those. So there's a lot of work in that. But with that, we're seeing the change from young people up, where they're going home and they're incorporating this into conversations with their parents, and in turn, they're moving towards healthy meals. So, and it's in essence, we have created this kind of food system within West Belfast where we're growing fresh food and incorporating that into what we do in the community. Again, with that, we've so many different strands and issues of what people are experiencing currently. One thing just to touch on as well, in terms of community connection, many our communities are so much diverse now currently as well, and how we approach poverty as well. We think of newcomer families coming to Belfast and arriving in our communities and having further hardship and struggles. An important factor, which not a lot of people sometimes take into account, is the fact of having access to culturally appropriate food as well. So that was an important thing for us, where people could access food such as halal food and so on as well. And with that, a place and connecting into the Solidarity Hub there as well, where we can remove that stigma around help. But just to give you an idea of just some of the things that we have been doing in the community as well, working to connect people in the community. But when I talk about a kind of a lack of a government response and where a community is stepping in, sometimes it's getting out of control. Like, community groups and organisations shouldn't really have to do this. Government should be stepping up and doing this. One thing that comes to our mind as well is the fact that we had so many parents coming to us and speaking about being unable to avail of dental appointments, for example, and we're very lucky in the community. We have built this real community solidarity movement where we do have access to people who are coming and basically saying, I've finished work at 5 o'clock, I'm going to go home and get changed, and I'll be back out and work in the community. And some of the things that have come from that have been the language hub, have been some of the support clinics and advice clinics as well. But another initiative like this as well, acting upon people not getting access to healthcare, acting upon people not getting access to dental appointments, was we set up something called We Smiles in West Belfast, where people could come and avail of dental support at our hub. So again, it's quite shocking that we have to get to this point where communities are stepping up and doing this, but that is where we're at in 2024. And again, it has really been about a movement of community solidarity, and it has really been about people coming together and people looking out for one another in our community as well. But again, everything we do, dignity has to be at the forefront of that. And again, it is very much more than handing out a parcel of food. It very much has been about a movement of solidarity. And again, in my experience throughout this course, it very much has been a community stepping up where government should have. And again, that is simply unacceptable. There comes a time when you do feel, and many community groups and many organisations will feel this, and many people sitting here today will feel this, that you're throwing the absolute kitchen sink at what we're trying to achieve in community. But still, numbers increase. Still, many people are coming with many issues. And I myself kind of thought very long and hard about the impact that we were having in communities. Food banks, social supermarkets, community fridges are providing a real lifeline to people right across communities right now, but it's a sticking plaster, it's not the answer. And for me, I felt as if I kind of needed to step up and go in a different direction. And I think we're hitting the nail on the head today about rights. This is about rights, and access to food should be a basic human right for all. For me personally, I felt as if we need to go to the next level, and I like a madman, put myself up for election locally, and I got a seat in Belfast City Council. And one of the first things I did at council was put forward a motion that made Belfast a right to food city. And we took to the front of the City Hall with many local organisations here to highlight the Right to Food campaign, which called on governments, local and otherwise, to recognise that access to food should be a basic human right for all, and that they very much must do all in their power to tackle the extreme levels of poverty in communities. Happy to say that we did make Belfast a right to food city in November of last year. And some people, we raised a motion and that was supported by every party. And some people kind of question motions and how much relevance they hold. But for me, by making Belfast a right to food city, I was able to knock every door. I was able to go into every meeting with that right to food card. And I placed it on every table. And I asked the question, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about poverty in our city? And the very first thing we did was change the approach at City Hall in terms of a response to hardship. There was a hardship fund. And again, relaying what was going on in communities, relaying some of the issues around child poverty. The first right to food action in Belfast, we were able to point £250,000 towards free school meals throughout our schools in the city and tackling child poverty. And again, a sticking plaster to the problem, really, but a long-term ambition and a part of the Right to Food campaign would be to make school meals free for all, and again, to eliminate that barrier of hunger from a child's education once and for all. There still is an awful lot more to do locally. There's even more to do when it comes to the executive and to our government. We were told that a robust, needs-based anti-poverty strategy would be a day one priority for the executive. But how many days have passed now? Too many. Importantly, though, how many more families have fallen further into poverty as a result of this shocking inaction? The answer again is too many. So, in terms of we talking about rights, in terms of we talking about the impacts on communities, I believe it's vital now that the executive bring about an anti-poverty strategy. and to outline as quickly as possible how they intend to live up to what is a legal obligation, really. We touched on that earlier, to tackle poverty, where we want to see measures, we want to see targets, and we want to see timescales and how they respond to this. This also isn't a job of one department, it's a job of all departments, and we need to keep putting poverty at the forefront of the conversation. Again, if you just go on social media, if you go on local media, you will see a lot of charities, a lot of community organisations talking about poverty. That's because they've stepped up. You know, we've yet to see a government step up and tackle poverty. But again, if we go back to the main conversation, if we go back to what we're trying to achieve here, this is very much about people. And I for one, think it's about time that we pull people out of poverty once for all here. In terms and conclusions, I think all of us are here today for various different reasons. Many of us are working to tackle poverty on the ground. Others are working in different areas. But I think we all kind of have a joint purpose, and that is to eradicate poverty from society entirely. And I would ask today that we commit to continue with that conversation and with one voice, keep shouting loud until we reach that goal. I'm delighted that this is in Belfast today, and I'm delighted the fact that we're going to have a conversation going forward right across the island, because I think it's very much needed. And I look forward to speaking to the rest of you today. So thank you very much for giving me the time today. Thank you.